But at any rate, this evolution took place because of Ann's leadership, the way she started it here. She took over from Gert because Gert was now somewhere else. And at that time, according to Dorothy Kirkpatrick, there were 2 or 3 people hired in the Department of Physical Education. And when Ann then stepped into a role of being a department chair or a coordinator of some sort within the Department of Physical Education. And soon after that, they split and had departments for men and for women, which gave opportunity for both units to progress a little bit more.
You know, we heard so much during the history of the AIAW of it offering an alternative model.
Yes.
Different from the model of men's athletics in the NCAA. So I always thought that it was ironic that one of the ultimate spin-offs of Title IX, and of course Title IX has done a lot of wonderful good in this country in increasing the opportunities for women in athletics, both at the high school level and at the intercollegiate athletic level. But it was always ironic to me that it also ultimately led to the transition of women's athletics from the AIAW over to the NCAA.
That's right. That's right. One of the big sticking points was scholarships. Presidents were wrestling with what to do with the women and their model in light of Title IX. Are we in compliance if we give scholarship aid to males and we don't to females? And that was an argument that went on, not an argument, a debate that went on and went on and went on. And finally, it was necessary in the eyes of that athletic model to have scholarships.
One of the things that I reflect back on fondly was the opportunity to watch that and learn about that largely through your eyes and the conversations that we had over those years.
And we had good support then here at Eastern at the presidential level. Dr. Martin was, I think, the person, in my view, in the OVC who saw this coming and who tried to do something about setting a stage for it. And I have always admired him for that, among other things too. And he was a leader in the OVC in that regard.
There was a real fundamental fairness that was part of Bob Martin's makeup.
Yes.
That he did so many other things with the remarkable building program on this campus, that his sensitivity to the right thing to do was sometimes overlooked. The other thing, and you talk about his people talk about it being important to be able to see around corners. I always say, Bob Martin saw around entire blocks, and it was one of the great educational benefits that I had to watch him and observe him. But the point I wanted to make in this part of the conversation so far was that Eastern and Eastern people had a real pivotal role in the development of intercollegiate athletic opportunities for women.
Yes.
But now in your 27 years on this campus, now surely somewhere along the line you had an opportunity to deal with some real characters.
Oh yeah.
And
oh yes. That's one thing about athletics, It has its educational component. Don't misunderstand me. Otherwise, why would it be in higher education? But it had its eccentrics, and it had its people who had strong opinions. And because of the fact that I think athletics is largely an emotional experience anyway, I mean, it's more that than anything else, more than physical fitness. Emotions could be high, and positions could be staunchly taken, and the idea of defending those sometimes got a most interesting response. But certainly the governance structure here at Eastern did the best it could, I think, to get these two models of athletics together. And there were some hard decisions that presidents had to make, about where the money was coming from to do something to.
You know, and part of those emotions that you talk about running high, you know, and I don't think I ever looked at it in this fashion. I don't think you did, but there were some folks who viewed the growth and the opportunities in women's athletics as coming at the expense of programs that they had built, and I think that was a natural sort of reaction at the time. I think as we have matured and moved past that, that's not a part of the equation that I see here now anymore.
From the distance that I am now from Eastern, having been retired for 14 years, I would agree with you there. However, in the beginning, there was thought that there was just so much money for athletics, and if you're running a university, you have to draw some boundaries somewhere, surely, in any department or any unit. And when you had not infinite amounts of money to spend to move the women into a more better position to compete, you had to do something about taking some money from the men's side, so to speak. And the whole idea was to get the men and the women together and not have men's side and women's side. Reaching across the aisle, though, it took a long time for that to not be the case. Mm-hmm. I know wrestling was dropped. There were track scholarships taken from men to give to women. Gymnastics for both men and women were dropped.
Women were dropped.
Swimming,
which was a co-ed sport at that time, was dropped. You know, I think there was a certain irony in the fact that you talked about that wonderful field hockey team and program that Miss Hood developed, and then when it became an intercollegiate sport, field hockey was a sport in which we were very competitive. Yes. There were athletes available, primarily from the Louisville area, but there were female Kentucky athletes to recruit for field hockey. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, the reality presented itself that we were the only Ohio Valley Conference team playing field hockey, and the OVC was going the way of fast pitch women's softball.
Right. That's right.
So it became given the history of field hockey on this campus, I think one of the most painful decisions I ever witnessed was the decision to suspend or drop field hockey so that we could get into softball. Yeah. And having said that, when you look at the wonderful softball teams that Jane Worthington has coached over the years, I'm glad we're into softball.
Right. We added golf too. I mean, even though field hockey was dropped, golf was eventually added. Soccer was added since my tenure, and then softball, and it had this notion that I hope is still with us, that athletes and coaches have the responsibility to reach out into the community. And it's not just raising funds for Haiti and that kind of thing, charitable kind of things, but also just to spread their knowledge around and their helpfulness around to girls coming along. And I think that the softball team has done a real good job of that.
They have. One of the things that I'm really proud of, and this is true for both our women's and our men's athletic programs now, is the extent to which our men and women athletes are out in healthcare facilities visiting people, but most noticeably when they go as groups and individuals to the elementary schools and participate in the reading programs with these students. I get so much positive feedback from school people, from the parents of children with schools in the Madison County schools, about how impressed they are with the role models that our young women and young men who represent us in athletics show, and how appreciative they are of that.
Oh, absolutely. It's a wonderful thing, particularly for a regional university.